All right, Nick, let's talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. A lot of moves, a lot of, shaking and baking over in Nebraska. They are changing some things up under Matt Rule. There's one change that they made recently that they absolutely corrected very quickly, and I think it's going to be a huge move for them going forward. We'll dive into that in just 1 second here. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, there are some changes going on at Nebraska. We have all read or heard in some capacity about what is going on with Dayton and Dylan Raiola, whatever the case is there. That's not the key. I think the key is that they have undoubtedly decided to move on from Donovan Raiola, who they most likely just kept there because of the relationship to the young quarterback. But now they've gone out and very quickly made a decision on a new offensive line coach. And I think this was a great decision for them going forward. Let's get into the article and then we'll kind of break down what this means for them with some data on the other side. So this is from over on SI.com. Nebraska officially parted ways with offensive line coach Donovan Raiola on Saturday, ending his 4-year run with the program. And according to earlier reports, Matt Rule didn't waste any time charting the next step. Multiple reports indicate that Georgia Tech's offensive line coach, Geep Wade, is being hired to fill Nebraska's vacancy. Wade finished his 3rd year with the Yellow Jackets, who ended the regular season at 9-3 and sits inside the top 25 entering bowl season. Georgia Tech recently rewarded head coach Brent Key with a 5-year extension, a sign of the program's rising trajectory and one that Wade played a major role in building. And if you looked at Georgia Tech recently, they've been a fierce program. They're a program you do not want to come again. With quarterback Haynes King, everything going on there. A big part is the offensive line has been upgraded. They're doing some really good stuff there as well. So I just want to show you how much impact exactly Wade had on that Georgia Tech offensive line and what he was able to do in such a short period there of 3 years. And this leads me to my first chart. We have here 4 years of Georgia Tech offensive line PFF grades. And if you see on the far left in the red is 2022. And this was the year before Wade came over. They had a 42.8 pass blocking grade, a 50.8 run blocking grade. Nothing really too great here. I think, it was a very lackluster offensive line. Not a whole lot going. And immediately you can see the next year when Wade comes into the fray, things catapult up very, very quickly. Got a 65.1 pass block grade, 60.4 run blocking grade. Next season, even better, 74.1, 60.1 run blocking grade. And overall, I would say the final year here is better because you get a boost in run blocking, a slight comeback to earth in the pass blocking, but 67.8 there to 64.8 run blocking grade. But still, I think overall, getting better in both is a good thing for this Georgia Tech offensive line. And we can see what they've done in just a short span of 3 years. He brought this offensive line from being, I would say, bad to being above average. And that's at Georgia Tech. We're not, I think Georgia Tech's a fine school. I think it's a decent football team. But this isn't a powerhouse. This isn't a team that is, recruiting nationally with the top 10, 15, 20 teams in the country. This is, unfortunately, a team that's probably mid to, below average as far as the ability of recruits they're able to get traditionally. So it's not that easy to build and develop an offensive line and get it to produce results. But Wade was able to do that at Georgia Tech. And I say a little bit about recruiting here because one thing he did at Georgia Tech, I think, is he absolutely turned around their recruiting game as well, which leads me to my next chart I made here showing the last 4 years of recruiting at Georgia Tech, what they're able to bring in. We're going to start at the bottom, actually, and work our way up. And we see here this 2022 class for them, they were only able to bring in 3-star offensive linemen. This is just offensive linemen they have brought in the last 4 years. In 2023, the first year Wade was there, they bumped it up. He hasn't made huge change, but they're able to get 5 3-star offensive linemen to come into the program. Again, in 2024, still working, still trying to, this is like the first class he really was able to dig his claws in. Again, 5 3-star offensive linemen, and now with a solid year under his belt of recruiting, what is he able to do? He comes in 4 3-star offensive linemen, 1 4-star offensive lineman, and 1 5-star offensive lineman into the fold for Georgia Tech, which I think is phenomenal. I think it's a really quick turnaround. And what he was able to do help in recruiting and developing this offensive line, I think is going to be a big factor for Nebraska going forward. Nebraska's got some decent guys on the offensive line. They've got some 4-stars. They have not gotten a 5-star under Donovan Raiola. He isn't able to get the job done. Hasn't been able to get that, the high-powered firepower into this offensive line group. And I think that's what Wade can do. He fits Matt Rhule's scheme where he can develop guys, young guys, and make them into successful offensive linemen. But also B, the second part here, is he's able to go out and get the big 5-star guys as well. He's able to bring in really high-powered recruits across the offensive line. And I think that's what's going to bring Nebraska to the next level. They're already a solid team. They're already making bowl games, doing some really good stuff. But I think to get to the next level, to be college football playoff contenders, they need a really good offensive line. And I think a guy like Geep Wade can help them get to there as well. Curious what your thoughts are on all of this, Nick. But before we get to you, Nebraska fans, in the comment section below, we're starting to see some changes, some coaching changes, making moves early in this offseason era. Let me know in the comment section below if you look at this team and what they need to do. Where would you like to see some changes? Is there, some coaching staff issues that you think need to be fixed as well? Is there anyone that you're liking potentially to take over those roles? Let us know your thoughts on everything Nebraska in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts here for the Cornhuskers?
So there's a lot to unpack here. First and foremost, getting Georgia Tech coaching talent, like you kind of alluded to, is an awesome move, certainly from the offensive side of the football. That is a Georgia Tech Rambling Wreck program that's been really bad for a long time in the ACC, but they've turned it around over the past couple of years. And like you said, they're not exactly a recruiting juggernaut. They've done it on the back of obviously good work by their players, but the coaches have done a phenomenal job developing, scouting, game plan, practicing every element of being coaching, and certainly on the offense side of the ball, A-plus work. And you've seen that from the Florida Gators. They brought in then their new head coach, and they hired Buster Faulkner, the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator, right? So right now, every single program in the country is looking to raid that offensive staff for the Rambling Wreck down in Atlanta just because of how good they are with the talent they were able to get. And I think that's been the problem with Nebraska offensively. I think they've got some guys. I think they got talent, offensive line, skilled players, obviously quarterback position, but they're not living up to it. And I think that's been a real issue and a real concern from Matt Rhule's perspective. It's like, listen, we've done a good job recruiting. We've done a good job developing some of these guys, but we're not executing at the level we need to. We're not turning that into success on Saturdays. And listen, it doesn't matter how good you do as a culture. It doesn't matter how good you do recruiting and the effort you put in, which Rhule has been A+ in both those departments, if you don't get quality execution when the games actually kick off on Saturdays. And that's what the offensive line, while hasn't been a dumpster fire, I think far from it, has been far from elite. And I think that's exactly the move here from Rhule. I also think it speaks to a larger transition under this Matt Rhule-led Nebraska program. Obviously, he needed the one splash move. He needed something to reset the program, and getting Raiola to commit and come to Nebraska was sort of the put us back on the map, put us back in the conversation. But that buzz eventually fades, and it kind of has, right? Nothing against Raiola as a quarterback. I still think he's got a lot of great physical tools. We'll see what happens, everything long-term there. But the program has reset under Matt Rhule. They're no longer a team like they were under Frost, where it's like, yuck, they were a former good team that's winning 3-4 games a year, 5 games a year. Those days are gone, thank goodness. But they still need to take that program up to the next level because they're still underperforming, right? They're not living up to the potential we were hoping to see from Nebraska this season. And so I think Matt Rhule understands, okay, it's time for a new era. Obviously, Raiola as the offensive line coach, far from a disaster, of course. But the reality is you need to take it to the next step. We need to push it to another level. It's no longer being just good enough as a staff to be acceptable, so that way we can reset this program and get us back to winning, bowl games, getting us back to 2 bowl games, right? That's come and gone. Nebraska's back into bowl games. That's great. But what about becoming a top 25 team, a top 20 team, a team that can contend in the Big Ten? You need to reset. You need to bring in those caliber of coaches. And that's what Georgia Tech has. And that's exactly what they got here in this hire. And I think it's one of the better hires of the entire offense, the entire offseason up to this point. Everyone focuses on obviously the head coach. You have to get that right. But the staff is so critical, especially at a position like offensive line, where it's about building a cohesive group of guys together and getting a lot of buy-in. You got to manage the 2 and sometimes 3 deep on the offensive line to make sure your depth is ready. It's such a developmental position, almost as much as quarterback, right? Offensive line, especially the way it's played at the high school level these days. You bring in these talented guys. You got to mold them into big time linemen. It's not an easy task. O-line coach is an underrated position on any staff, and getting this hire absolutely right is 100% critical. And I think Nebraska did it here. I also think it speaks to a larger impact that Rule wants to have on this football team in terms of balance. And I think they're missing that at times with this team. If you look at the Georgia Tech offense last year, incredibly balanced in terms of efficiency in the ACC. They were top 3 in terms of passing and running at the same time. So this was a program that was known for running the football well, throwing the football well, and obviously you can't throw it well or run it well without good blocking up front. So you can see Rule from a strategic perspective in terms of what they want offensively. They want more balance. They want more efficiency, and coming from Georgia Tech's program, that's what they're going to get right here. I also think it's a level up hire, and it is important in any program, right? And for anyone that understands business and looks into that kind of life, you understand that if you're in a turnaround position, if you're a big company and you're struggling, you bring in a turnaround artist, happens all the time. New CEO comes in, he fills out his staff, right? Fills out all the positions. But those are turnaround guys. Those are guys that are turning a company that's about to go bankrupt back to stability. But those are guys that are good at those roles. And now you got to bring in different guys who are good at their new roles. And that's exactly what Nebraska is doing here. The situation has changed. So the staff should change with that. And that's exactly what Rule is doing. And I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, Nick, and I think the key here for me is one thing, and I think I need to express this more clearly, is when you look at what Wade did at Georgia Tech and when you look at what has happened at Nebraska, I think when Matt Rule came in, he himself, as far as what he was able to bring in, you talked about this, I think it's really important, the excitement under Nebraska as far as like getting a guy like Dylan Raiola to come in. It really helped them in their recruiting and able to get guys. And as I alluded to earlier on when I was going through recruits that Georgia Tech was able to get, Nebraska has gotten some 4-star guys over the year. They've gotten better recruiting until this final year at Georgia Tech than Georgia Tech was able to get. But nonetheless, with those better recruits, that better talent, they haven't really pulled it off quite well, especially this year was their best year. I think they had 2 4-star guys in this class. They had 16th in the country in pass blocking and 24th in the country run blocking, which is okay. Nothing too special. But again, we're talking like very mediocre as far as where they are in the rankings. But I think that's the key is what Wade was able to do with much worse recruiting, much worse firepower in the program, no excitement really in Georgia Tech until I'd say maybe this year there's some excitement, but this year it's come and gone, and that's the recruiting grass we're talking about. The excitement from this year isn't going to bring those guys in. So he's able to do that on the backs of, not a lot of, excitement going around that program. So I think him coming over here for Nebraska is going to be a key. I think, like you said, it's a really great move for them. I expect when Wade gets on this staff, we're going to see a big turnaround. That's what I'm going to look at the next coming weeks over this offseason is let's take an eye on this offensive line class in 2026 for Nebraska. What are they able to do? Are they going to shake things up? Might take another year for them to really start to get guys coming in, but I think we're going to see a big move. I think we're going to see some higher level recruits come into this Nebraska program.